On a chilly December evening in 2013, the bustling aisles of a Los Angeles toy store were alive with holiday shoppers. Among them stood 12-year-old Ethan Parker, his small hands clutching a carefully counted mix of coins and crumpled dollar bills. These modest savings were the result of months of determination, as Ethan had scrimped and saved every penny he could find. His eyes locked onto a delicate snow globe perched on a shelf nearby, a simple but enchanting piece with swirling glitter and a cozy winter scene inside. It was perfect, and it wasn't just any gift. It was the one his mom, Claire, had admired weeks earlier. Ethan could still picture the moment. Walking past the store window one afternoon, Claire had paused to admire the snow globe. Her gaze lingered for a few seconds, her face soft with longing before she whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe someday," and walked away. For Ethan, someday wasn't good enough. His mom had sacrificed so much for him, working long hours at two grueling jobs, waitressing during the day and cleaning offices late into the night. Though their one-bedroom apartment lacked luxuries, Claire's love and resilience made it feel like a home filled with warmth and laughter. This Christmas, Ethan wanted to do something special for her, to repay her in some small way for all she had done. He wanted to give her the snow globe, to see her face light up with a genuine smile, something that had been rare in recent years. The thought of making her happy gave him all the motivation he needed. As his heart raced with anticipation, Ethan carefully picked up the snow globe, handling it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. He made his way to the register, his palms slightly sweaty, silently praying that the price hadn't changed since he'd last seen it. The cashier, a kind-faced older woman, smiled as she scanned the item, but that smile faltered as she looked at the screen. "I'm sorry, kid," she said gently, her voice tinged with regret. "The price went up last week. It's $22 now." Ethan's heart sank. His small stash, though painstakingly saved, wasn't enough. He carefully emptied his pockets, placing every last coin and crumpled bill on the counter, even fishing out a few pennies he had found on the walk to the store. Still, the total fell short. "I thought I had enough," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The cashier's expression softened with sympathy, but she shook her head apologetically. Crushed, Ethan clutched the snow globe tightly, willing himself not to cry. He turned to leave, his steps heavy with disappointment, when a deep, warm voice spoke from behind him. "Hey, let me help with that." Ethan froze, his breath catching in his throat. Slowly, he turned around and found himself face to face with a man in a simple jacket and a baseball cap, his scruffy beard unable to hide the unmistakable features of Keanu Reeves. The actor's kind eyes locked onto Ethan's, and a small, reassuring smile crossed his face. Ethan blinked, too stunned to speak. The cashier, equally astonished, stood frozen with her mouth slightly open. Keanu crouched down to Ethan's level, his tone gentle but sincere. "You buying this for someone special?" he asked. Ethan nodded shyly, his voice trembling. "For my mom. She works a lot, and she really liked it." Keanu's expression softened even further. "She sounds like a pretty amazing person," he said. Standing up, he pulled out his wallet and handed the cashier a crisp $50 bill. "Let's take care of this for him, and make sure he gets some change," Keanu added with a grin. Ethan's cheeks flushed with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. But Keanu wasn't done. "Your mom deserves more than just this," Keanu said thoughtfully. "How about we find her something extra special? Mind if I help you pick out another gift?" Ethan's jaw dropped. "Really?" he asked, his disbelief clear. "Really?" Keanu replied, his smile unwavering. Together, they wandered the store, Keanu asking Ethan questions about Claire, what she liked, her favorite color, her hobbies, and even chatting about Ethan's interests. The boy's initial shyness faded as he spoke about his mom's unwavering dedication and their small but cherished Christmas traditions. Keanu listened intently, his genuine curiosity putting Ethan completely at ease. As they browsed, whispers began spreading among other shoppers. Customers discreetly pointed and snapped photos, marveling at the sight of the Hollywood star kneeling next to a young boy. carefully debating the merits of various scarves and candles. By the time they returned to the register with a second gift, a cozy scarf that Keanu had insisted Claire would love, a small crowd had gathered. Unfazed, Keanu paid for the scarf and handed the bag to Ethan. He crouched down once more, his tone serious but kind. "Now, when you give this to her, make sure you tell her it's not just from you. Tell her it's from someone who thinks she's an incredible mom and that she raised a pretty great kid." Ethan nodded earnestly, tears brimming in his eyes. "I will." The store erupted in applause as Keanu stood, his kindness inspiring awe from everyone present. But as people clamored for photos and autographs, Keanu leaned down to Ethan with a wink. "How about you help me sneak out of here?" Ethan giggled and nodded, following Keanu toward the exit. Outside, as the cold December air brushed against their faces, Keanu knelt one last time to meet Ethan's gaze. "Take good care of your mom," he said gently. "She deserves the world." Ethan's heart swelled with gratitude. "I will," he promised. As Keanu stood and walked away, disappearing into the evening, Ethan clutched the bag tightly, already imagining the joy on his mother's face. That snowy evening, in the crowded aisles of a toy store, a simple act of kindness became a moment of magic, one that Ethan and Claire would carry with them forever. Ethan's heart sank as he laid out every last coin he had, desperately hoping it would be enough. But even with a few stray pennies from his pockets added to the counter, he still fell short. A lump formed in his throat as the weight of disappointment settled on his young shoulders. He clutched the snow globe tightly, as if holding on to the dream it represented, and turned to leave, fighting back tears. Just as he took a step toward the door, a deep, steady voice broke through the hum of the busy store. "Hey, let me take care of that." Ethan stopped in his tracks, unsure if he had heard correctly. Slowly, he turned to see a tall man in a plain jacket and a baseball cap standing behind him. The man's familiar face softened into a warm, reassuring smile. It was Keanu Reeves. The cashier froze, her hand hovering over the register, her expression a mixture of shock and disbelief. But Keanu paid no attention to the murmurs that were already starting to ripple through the store. Instead, he crouched down so that he was at eye level with Ethan, his kind eyes meeting the boy's. "You're buying this for someone special, aren't you?" Keanu asked, his voice gentle and full of genuine curiosity. Ethan hesitated for a moment before nodding shyly. "For my mom. She works really hard. She really liked it when we saw it here before." Keanu's smile deepened, his eyes softening. "Your mom sounds like an amazing person," he said sincerely. Rising to his feet, he reached into his wallet and pulled out a crisp $50 bill, handing it to the cashier. He added with a wink, "This one's on me, and make sure the kid gets his change." "Okay." Ethan stared in disbelief, his emotions swirling between gratitude and astonishment. Barely able to find his voice, he managed to whisper, "Thank you." Keanu crouched down again, resting one arm on his knee as he looked Ethan in the eye. "You know," he began, his tone warm, "I've got a soft spot for moms. She sounds like she's pretty incredible. What's her name?" "Claire," Ethan replied, his voice still quiet but steadier now. Keanu nodded thoughtfully, his expression brightening with an idea. "Well, Ethan," he said, his tone carrying a note of enthusiasm, "let's make sure Claire has the best Christmas ever. What do you say we pick out something else for her, too?" Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" he asked, his voice tinged with hope and excitement. Keanu chuckled softly, the sound warm and inviting. "Absolutely," he replied. "Come on, let's find something she'll love." The two began wandering through the store together, with Keanu taking the time to ask Ethan about his mom, what she liked, what made her laugh, and what kinds of things might bring her joy. As they moved from aisle to aisle, Ethan's initial nervousness melted away. He found himself opening up, sharing little stories about his mom's sacrifices and how much she loved their small Christmas traditions, like decorating their tiny tree and watching old holiday movies together. Keanu listened intently, nodding and occasionally asking thoughtful questions that showed he cared about every word Ethan was saying. His genuine interest put the boy at ease, and soon, They were both scanning the shelves with shared determination. After a while, Keanu stopped in front of a display of scarves. He picked up a soft, cozy one in a deep, rich color. "What do you think about this?" he asked, holding it up for Ethan to see. Ethan tilted his head, considering it carefully. "It's nice," he said, then added with a shy smile. "She gets cold a lot when she comes home late from work." Keanu smiled broadly. "Then I think we've found the perfect gift," he said confidently. By the time they returned to the register, a small crowd had begun to gather. Whispers floated through the store as customers realized who Keanu was, and some discreetly pulled out their phones to capture the moment. But Keanu remained focused on Ethan, unfazed by the attention. He paid for the scarf, placed it gently into a bag alongside the snow globe, and handed it to Ethan with a warm smile. "Now," he said, crouching down once more, "when you give this to her, I want you to tell her something for me." Ethan leaned in, listening intently. "Tell her it's not just from you." Keanu continued. "Tell her it's from someone who thinks she raised an incredible kid." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, and he nodded solemnly. "I will," he promised. Clutching the bag tightly, Keanu stood, placing a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. Just as the crowd began to clap and cheer, someone called out, "Keanu, you're a legend." Keanu smiled politely but glanced down at Ethan with a playful look. "What do you say, buddy? Want to help me sneak out of here?" Ethan giggled, his heart swelling with a mixture of joy and disbelief. Together, they made their way toward the exit, Keanu expertly deflecting attention with a wave and a grin as he kept Ethan close by his side. As they stepped outside into the crisp evening air, Keanu crouched down one last time, meeting Ethan's gaze with a sincere expression. "Take good care of your mom." "Okay, she deserves it." "I will," Ethan said firmly, his voice full of confidence and gratitude. Keanu ruffled the boy's hair with a soft chuckle before standing and walking away, disappearing into the night as quietly as he had appeared. For Ethan, that evening was nothing short of magical. He returned home with a heart full of gratitude, clutching the gifts that would make this Christmas unforgettable for his mom. And while the snow globe and scarf were tangible tokens of kindness, it was the memory of Keanu's generosity and the way he made Ethan feel that would remain etched in the boy's heart forever. Ethan's face lit up with disbelief. "Really?" he asked, his voice tinged with hope and excitement. Keanu gave a warm chuckle and gestured toward the aisles. "Absolutely. Let's make sure we find something your mom will really love." Without another word, the unlikely pair began wandering the store together. Keanu leaned down slightly as they walked, asking thoughtful questions about Claire, her favorite colors, the little things that made her smile, and what Ethan thought would make her happiest. At first, Ethan spoke in a hesitant whisper, but as he saw Keanu's genuine interest, his words began to flow. He described his mom's love for simple, meaningful things, like the way she'd laugh when they watched old movies together, or how she'd always make time to help him with homework, no matter how tired she was after work. As they browsed, a quiet buzz started spreading through the store. Shoppers began to notice the duo. Some whispered in hushed tones, their eyes wide with awe, while others discreetly reached for their phones, snapping photos from a distance. The sight of a Hollywood star helping a young boy pick out Christmas gifts was surreal. Yet Keanu seemed utterly unaffected by the attention. His focus remained solely on Ethan and their shared mission. When they reached a display of scarves, Keanu stopped. He picked up a soft, plush scarf in a rich, deep shade and held it out for Ethan to see. "What about this one?" he asked, draping it gently over his arm. "It's warm, cozy, and I think it suits her perfectly." Ethan ran his fingers over the fabric, his eyes thoughtful. "She always gets cold when she comes home late from work," he said quietly, almost to himself. Then, with a small smile, he nodded. "Yeah, I think she'd like it." Keanu grinned. Then it settled. By the time they returned to the register, they had chosen not just the snow globe, but also the scarf. As Keanu paid for everything, more people gathered nearby, watching the scene unfold. Some whispered words of admiration, while others tried to capture the moment with their phones. Despite the growing crowd, Keanu remained calm and focused. After completing the transaction, he crouched down once more, handing the bag carefully to Ethan. "Now, listen closely," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "When you give these to her, I want you to tell her something." Ethan tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "What should I tell her?" Keanu smiled softly. "Tell her it's not just from you. Tell her it's from someone who thinks she raised an amazing kid." Ethan's grip on the bag tightened as tears filled his eyes. He nodded earnestly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I will. I promise." Just as Keanu was preparing to leave, the store erupted into spontaneous applause. A man near the back of the crowd called out, "Keanu, you're a legend." Others joined in, clapping and cheering, while a few people shouted requests for photos. Keanu glanced around, his expression polite but reserved. He leaned down toward Ethan with a playful smile. "What do you say, buddy? Want to help me escape this circus?" Ethan giggled, his earlier nervousness replaced by a growing sense of confidence. But before he could answer, a woman stepped forward from the edge of the crowd. She was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, her demeanor poised yet kind. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her tone firm but respectful. "May I have a moment of your time?" Keanu's smile shifted slightly, curiosity flickering across his face. He glanced at Ethan and gave him a reassuring nod. "Hang tight for a second." "Okay," he said gently before turning to the woman. Ethan watched as Keanu followed her to a quieter corner of the store. Though he couldn't hear their conversation, he noticed Keanu's expression change, first one of surprise, then thoughtfulness, and finally, a resolute nod. Whatever the woman had said, it had clearly struck a chord. When Keanu returned, his demeanor was calm but purposeful. He knelt down beside Ethan once more, placing a hand lightly on the boy's shoulder. "Ethan," he said, his tone soft but deliberate, "how about we make this Christmas even more special for your mom?" Ethan blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice filled with both wonder and curiosity. Keanu's smile widened. "You'll see," he said with a wink, "but I'm going to need your help." The crowd in the store watched silently, their earlier excitement replaced by quiet reverence. Whatever Keanu had planned, it was clear that this moment was about more than just a Christmas gift. It was about something far deeper, something that would stay with Ethan and Claire long after the season had passed. With a final nod of encouragement to Ethan, Keanu stood, his presence commanding yet comforting, as they prepared to leave the store together. It was clear to everyone watching that this was no ordinary encounter. It was a reminder of the profound impact a single act of kindness could have and the way it could ripple outward, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. As the woman spoke quietly with Keanu, his expression shifted from surprise to deep contemplation. By the time he returned to Ethan, his eyes carried a sense of determination. "Ethan," Keanu said with a soft but decisive tone, "how about we make this day even more special for your mom?" Ethan tilted his head, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice laced with curiosity. Keanu crouched slightly, meeting Ethan's gaze with a reassuring grin. "You'll see," he said with a wink, "but I'm going to need your help to pull it off." With that, they exited the store together, Keanu guiding Ethan through the growing crowd with an easy confidence that kept the onlookers at bay. Once outside, Keanu reached for his phone and made a brief call. Within moments, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb, its windows tinted and engine humming softly. Keanu opened the door for Ethan, gesturing for him to climb in. As the SUV wove through the bustling streets of Los Angeles, Ethan found himself relaxing in Keanu's presence. The boy began sharing more about his life, the nights his mom came home exhausted but still made time to sit with him, the little Christmas rituals they cherished, and the sacrifices she had made to ensure he never felt like he was going without. His words flowed freely now, unburdened by the earlier shyness, and his admiration for his mom shone brightly in every detail. Keanu listened intently, his attention unwavering. He nodded occasionally, asking thoughtful questions that encouraged Ethan to keep talking. "What's your favorite tradition with your mom?" Keanu asked at one point, his voice genuinely curious. Ethan smiled. Probably decorating our tiny Christmas tree," he said. "It's not very big, and we've had it forever, but she always makes it feel special." Keanu chuckled, a warm and heartfelt sound that made Ethan feel even more at ease. "It sounds like your mom has a knack for making things magical," he said. After a short drive, the SUV pulled up in front of a modest apartment complex. The building was older, its exterior showing signs of wear, but it radiated a quiet charm. Keanu stepped out first, holding the door open for Ethan before walking him to the front entrance. As they reached the door, Keanu handed the boy the bag containing the snow globe and scarf, his expression serious yet kind. "Ethan," he began, his voice low and steady, "this isn't just about the gifts. It's about showing your mom how much she means to you. She sounds like an incredible woman who's done so much for you." Ethan looked down at the bag, his fingers gripping it tightly. He nodded, his voice barely audible. "She is. She's the best." Keanu smiled, placing a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Then make sure she knows it. Trust me, she'll treasure this more than you can imagine." As Ethan opened the door to step inside, Keanu paused, leaning down one last time. "Oh, and tell her to keep her afternoon free tomorrow," he added with a grin. "I'll be back." Ethan's eyes widened, his surprise mingling with excitement. "Really?" Keanu nodded, his expression playful yet sincere. "Really? But don't spoil the surprise." With that, Keanu turned and walked back to the waiting SUV, giving Ethan a small wave before disappearing into the night. Ethan stood there for a moment, clutching the bag to his chest, a mixture of wonder and gratitude coursing through him. Inside the apartment, Ethan carefully placed the gifts under their modest Christmas tree. The familiar sight of the little tree, adorned with mismatched ornaments and glowing softly, filled him with a renewed sense of hope. When his mom returned home later that evening, her tired face lit up as she noticed the snow globe sitting beneath the tree. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "How did you?" Ethan simply smiled, his heart swelling with pride and anticipation. "You'll see tomorrow, Mom," he said, his grin widening. "Just make sure you're home." The following day arrived with an air of quiet anticipation. Claire, puzzled by Ethan's insistence, spent the morning tidying up the apartment despite his protests. At exactly 2 p.m., a knock at the door broke the stillness. Ethan bolted to open it, his heart pounding with excitement. Standing there, just as promised, was Keanu Reeves, holding a bouquet of simple white lilies and an envelope in his hands. Claire froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Keanu stepped inside with a warm smile. "You must be Claire," he said gently. "Ethan's told me so much about you." Claire blinked, her cheeks flushing as she tried to find her voice. I don't understand. What's happening?" Keanu handed her the flowers, then the envelope. "Sometimes amazing people deserve a little help," he said softly. "Your son thinks the world of you, and after hearing about everything you've done, I have to agree." With trembling hands, Claire opened the envelope. Inside was a completed scholarship application for a local community college's teaching program, along with a personal note from Keanu offering to cover any remaining costs, tuition, books, even childcare. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at Ethan, then back at Keanu. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice breaking. This is more than I could have ever dreamed." Keanu shook his head, his kind smile never faltering. "Just say yes. The world needs more incredible teachers like you." The room was filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude and emotion. For the first time in years, Claire allowed herself to dream again, buoyed by the kindness of a stranger who had seen her worth and reminded her to see it too. Ethan nodded, his gratitude shining through his teary eyes. As Keanu turned to leave, he paused and glanced back with a warm smile. "Oh, and one more thing," he said with a playful wink. "Tell her to keep tomorrow afternoon free. I'll be back." The following day unfolded like a dream. At precisely 2 p.m., a gentle knock echoed through the modest apartment. Claire, curious yet puzzled by Ethan's insistence to stay home, opened the door and froze. Standing there was Keanu Reeves, holding a bouquet of elegant white lilies in one hand and a sealed envelope in the other. His presence was as unexpected as it was surreal. Claire's voice faltered as she struggled to process what she was seeing. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand trembling as it flew to cover her mouth. Keanu offered a kind smile, his voice calm and sincere. "You must be Claire," he said warmly. "Ethan has told me so much about you." Claire blinked, her emotions swirling between disbelief and awe. I don't understand. What's going on?" Keanu stepped forward, extending the bouquet with a gentle gesture. "Sometimes," he began softly, "remarkable people deserve a little help." His words were steady, carrying a genuine admiration that left Claire momentarily speechless. He handed her the envelope next. "Your son thinks the world of you, and after hearing all about you, I couldn't agree more." Claire's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside, she found a completed scholarship application for a local teaching program, along with a handwritten letter from Keanu himself. The letter outlined his commitment to covering every expense: tuition, books, childcare, and anything else she might need to achieve her dream. Her eyes filled with tears as the realization of what she was holding sank in. I don't even know what to say," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Keanu's smile deepened, his tone as reassuring as ever. "Say yes," he replied simply. "The world needs more people like you shaping the next generation." For a moment, the room was silent, the weight of the gesture settling over them. Claire looked down at the envelope, then back at Ethan, who stood beaming with pride. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled her son into a tight hug, her voice trembling as she said, "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for believing in me." Keanu stood quietly, his presence warm but unassuming, letting the moment belong to them. When Claire finally turned back to him, her voice was filled with gratitude. "I don't know why you would do this for us," she said softly, "but I will never forget it. Thank you." Keanu shook his head modestly. "This was all Ethan's doing," he said, his gaze shifting to the boy. "He loves you so much, it's impossible not to want to help." The hours that followed were filled with warmth and conversation. Keanu stayed for tea at their modest kitchen table, chatting easily with Claire and Ethan as if they had been friends for years. The tiny apartment, with its peeling wallpaper and second-hand furniture, seemed to glow with an unexpected magic. Keanu noticed everything: the small pile of Ethan's schoolbooks on the table, the well-worn but neatly folded laundry, and the little Christmas tree in the corner adorned with mismatched ornaments. It was a home filled with love, laughter, and resilience. "You've done an amazing job, Claire," Keanu said, his voice low and sincere. "Ethan is proof of that." Claire smiled, her cheeks still damp with tears. "I've just been doing my best," she replied. "He's my whole world." Her eyes flicked back to the envelope on the table. "But this is more than I ever dreamed of. I don't even know how to thank you." Keanu leaned back slightly, folding his arms in thought. "You don't need to thank me," he said after a moment. "Just promise me you'll believe in yourself as much as Ethan believes in you. That's all the thanks I need." Claire's eyes filled with fresh tears at his words. She looked at Ethan, who stood by her side, his chest puffed out with pride. "I'll try," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'll really try." As Keanu rose to leave, he crouched down one last time to speak to Ethan. "Take care of your mom," he said with a playful grin. "She's one of the good ones." Ethan nodded, his face glowing with determination. "I will." Keanu ruffled his hair affectionately before stepping toward the door. With a final warm smile, he turned and disappeared down the hallway, leaving behind a family forever changed by his generosity. That Christmas became the beginning of a new chapter for Claire and Ethan. In the weeks that followed, Claire completed the scholarship application and began preparing for her classes. The path ahead wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and days when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. But every time she felt like giving up, she would glance at the snow globe on their shelf, a reminder of the kindness that had sparked her journey. Keanu never contacted them again directly, but his gesture set a ripple effect in motion that carried them through the years. Claire graduated 2 years later, earning her teaching credential and landing a job at a local elementary school. Ethan, now in high school, watched his mom transform into the confident, inspiring person he had always known she could be. Years later, as Claire stood before a classroom of second graders, helping them learn to read, she often thought back to that snowy December day. The kindness of a stranger had not only changed her life, but reminded her of the power of believing in others. Every Christmas, as Claire and Ethan decorated their tree, they placed the snow globe at the very top, a lasting symbol of hope, love, and the magic of compassion. The years that followed that fateful Christmas were filled with growth, resilience, and a newfound sense of purpose. Claire embraced her studies with unwavering determination, juggling her coursework, part-time job, and the responsibilities of raising Ethan. There were days when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but the memory of Keanu's encouragement and Ethan's unwavering belief in her kept her going. Ethan, too, blossomed in ways Claire hadn't anticipated, inspired by his mother's dedication and the kindness they had experienced. He threw himself into his studies and hobbies with renewed passion. He started volunteering at a local community center, helping younger kids with homework and organizing holiday food drives. His mother's transformation had lit a fire in him, and he was determined to make a difference in the lives of others, just as someone had made a difference in theirs. One evening, years later, Claire and Ethan sat together in their modest yet cozy living room. The snow globe, its pristine glass glinting in the warm light, sat on the mantel, a silent witness to their journey. "Do you ever wonder what happened to him?" Ethan asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Claire smiled softly, her eyes fixed on the snow globe. "I do," she admitted, "but I think what matters most is what he left behind. He believed in us when we didn't believe in ourselves. That's a gift I'll never forget." By the time Ethan graduated high school, he had become a leader in his community, his mother's resilience and Keanu's compassion serving as his guiding principles. He often told his friends about the Christmas that changed their lives, not as a tale of charity, but as a story of how one act of kindness could inspire countless others. On Claire's first day as a teacher, she stood nervously in front of her classroom, her hands trembling slightly as she introduced herself to her students. But as she began to speak, she felt the same quiet strength that had carried her through years of struggle. Her journey had come full circle, and now she had the chance to inspire a new generation to believe in themselves. One particularly cold December evening, Claire and Ethan were decorating their Christmas tree. The familiar warmth of the season filled their home, the scent of pine mingling with the aroma of freshly baked cookies. As they placed the snow globe atop the tree, Claire turned to Ethan. "Do you remember what Keanu said to you that day?" she asked. Ethan nodded, his voice steady. "Take care of your mom. She's one of the good ones." "I'll never forget it." Claire chuckled softly, her heart swelling with pride. "Well, you've done a pretty amazing job," she said, pulling him into a tight embrace. As they stepped back to admire their work, the snow globe's tiny, glimmering flakes seemed to dance in the soft glow of the Christmas lights. It was more than just a decoration. It was a reminder of how far they had come and the enduring power of compassion. Even though they never saw Keanu again, his presence was etched into their lives in ways words couldn't fully capture. For Claire and Ethan, every Christmas was a celebration, not just of the holiday spirit, but of the transformative magic of kindness and the unshakable belief that, no matter how dark the night, there was always light to be found.